Winter War. The Winter War was fought between the Soviet Union and Finland after the USSR invaded its neighbor to secure strategic territory and establish a buffer zone against potential Western threats. Despite being outnumbered and outgunned, the Finnish forces, known for their guerrilla tactics and knowledge of the terrain, inflicted heavy losses on the Soviet army. The war ended with the Moscow Peace Treaty in 1940, where Finland ceded some territory to the Soviet Union but maintained its independence. World War I. World War I, also known as the Great War, was a global conflict that erupted in 1914 and lasted until 1918. The war was triggered by the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand of Austria-Hungary. Technological advancements in weaponry, such as machine guns, tanks, and chemical weapons, made the conflict exceptionally deadly. World War I had profound effects on the political landscape of Europe, leading to the fall of empires, the redrawing of national borders, and significant social and economic upheaval. Iran-Iraq War. The Iran-Iraq War was a protracted conflict between Iran and Iraq, sparked by territorial disputes and political rivalries. The war saw trench warfare, chemical attacks, and large-scale casualties on both sides. It ended in a stalemate with no significant territorial changes, but left both countries economically devastated. The conflict had far-reaching consequences for regional stability and international relations in the Persian Gulf. Yom Kippur War. The Yom Kippur War, also known as the October War, was fought between Israel and a coalition of Arab states, including Egypt and Syria. Launched on the Jewish holy day of Yom Kippur in 1973, the surprise attack caught Israel off guard. Israel managed to repel the invasions with significant military assistance from the United States. The war underscored the volatility of Middle Eastern politics and the strategic balance in the region. Falklands War, 1982. Falklands War was a conflict between Argentina and the United Kingdom over the sovereignty of the Falkland Islands in the South Atlantic. Argentina, under military rule, invaded the islands in April 1982, triggering a British military response. The war saw naval battles, airstrikes, and amphibious operations, culminating in the Argentine surrender in June 1982. Vietnam War. The Vietnam War was a protracted conflict between communist forces in North Vietnam, supported by the Soviet Union and China, and the anti-communist government of South Vietnam, backed by the United States and its allies. The war saw intense fighting, including major battles like the Tet Offensive and the Siege of Khe Sanh. It ended in 1975 with the fall of Saigon and the unification of Vietnam under communist rule, marking a significant turning point in Cold War geopolitics. The 100 Years' War. The 100 Years' War was a series of conflicts waged between the Kingdom of England and the Kingdom of France, along with various allies, over control of the French throne. This prolonged period of warfare was driven by a combination of dynastic disputes, territorial ambitions, and economic factors. It significantly shaped the development of both nations and had lasting impacts. World War II. World War II was a global conflict that involved most of the world's nations. The war began in September 1939 with Germany's invasion of Poland, triggering a rapid series of invasions and alliances that drew countries into the conflict. The conflict also witnessed widespread atrocities and genocide, notably the Holocaust, where 6 million Jews and millions of others deemed undesirable by the Nazis were systematically murdered. The war ended in 1945 with the Allied victory. The Pacific War concluded after the United States dropped atomic bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, leading to Japan's surrender in August 1945. Korean War. The Korean War began when North Korea invaded South Korea. The conflict quickly involved the United States and China, with the UN backing South Korea. The war ended in an armistice, with Korea remaining divided along the 38th parallel. Second Italo-Ethiopian War. The Second Italo-Ethiopian War was a colonial conflict between Italy and Ethiopia and few independent nations in Africa. Motivated by imperial ambitions, Italian dictator Benito Mussolini sought to expand Italy's colonial holdings in East Africa. Algerian War of Independence. The Algerian War of Independence was a bitter struggle between the National Liberation Front, FLN, and French colonial forces. Fueled by nationalist aspirations and resentment against French rule, the conflict escalated into a guerrilla war marked by atrocities on both sides. International pressure and domestic unrest eventually led to France granting Algeria independence in 1962. The Polish-Soviet War. The Polish-Soviet War was a conflict between Poland and Soviet Russia. After World War I, both countries wanted control over areas in present-day Ukraine and Belarus. Poland aimed to secure its eastern borders, while Soviet Union wanted to spread communism westward. The war ended with the Treaty of Riga in 1921. The Napoleonic Wars. The Napoleonic Wars were fought between France, led by Napoleon Bonaparte, and various European coalitions. Napoleon aimed to expand French territory and influence. Major battles included Austerlitz in 1805, where Napoleon defeated Austria and Russia, and Waterloo in 1815, where he was finally defeated by the British and Prussians. The wars ended with the Congress of Vienna, the Russian Civil War. The Russian Civil War was a conflict between the Red Army, Bolsheviks, and the White Army, anti-Bolsheviks, after the Russian Revolution in 1917. The war was brutal and widespread, causing millions of deaths due to fighting and disease. The Red Army eventually won by 1923 and had solidified their control over Russia, leading to the creation of the Soviet Union. The Greco-Turkish War. The Greco-Turkish War was fought between Greece and Turkey after World War I. Greece aimed to expand its territory in Asia Minor, while Turkey, led by Mustafa Kemal Ataturk, sought to defend and reclaim its land. Greek forces initially advanced, capturing key cities, but Turkish forces regrouped and launched a successful counteroffensive. The war ended with the Treaty of Lausanne in 1923, which established the borders of modern Turkey.